Of course, I had to talk about Peanut. I had to. I had to talk about Peanut. You know, one thing that we focus on a lot in this channel is government overreach, the state doing terrible, horrendous things for absolutely no other reason than just its lust for power or even just petty bureaucracy. Well, here is a fine example. And it sounded like to some people this might sound absolutely ridiculous, but to me, no. This is completely something that they would do. Anchor's face drops in disbelief as he gives update about Peanut the squirrel. News anchors from a flagship news station in New York were seen reacting unfavourably to the saga surrounding Peanut the squirrel. Gus Rosendale and Pat Battle, both co-anchors for NBC4 New York's Weekend Today in New York, appeared to express disdain over state officials' decision to put the pet down. The government stormed the house, arrested the owners, and then put down their pets. One of them being Peanut the squirrel and also Fred the raccoon. They murdered their pets. The state went in and murdered people's pets. And there was a Karen that was snitching to them the entire time, who's apparently erased all of her social media, and she's tried her hardest to vanish, but people have found her. Rosendale also seemed to make a snide comment about Albany's warped priorities ahead of election week as he sniped, "All right, that's what Albany is focusing on," while letting out an incredulous smirk and dropping his face. Peanut, who had become a social media sensation, was killed after a raid on owner Mark Longo's home on Wednesday. A raccoon was also seized and euthanized. That would be poor little Fred. The pet squirrel has since become a bizarre election talking point for conservatives, with the Trump campaign slamming the Democratic New York government for executing Peanut but failing to crack down on the migrant crisis, which is true. Murderers and rapists are allowed to just walk across the border willy-nilly, no checks on them to see who or what they are. There are children even being trafficked into sex slavery and all that stuff as well. And what's the government focusing on? A squirrel. A fucking squirrel. That is what the government's focusing on. That is what made them send in the feds. A squirrel. It's a fucking joke. There's little Peanut there. R.I.P. Fly high, my angle. During the Wednesday raid, Peanut bit an investigator, an act authorities used to justify euthanizing him to test for rabies. Based Peanut. The investigator deserved it. What were you doing going in and messing about with them, right? That's completely your fault. The decision came in lieu of a less lasting quarantine, which would have seen officials only observe the animal for signs of rabies. Instead, they killed not only him but Longo's raccoon as well, spurring a reaction out of Rosendale in particular. "You might have heard this little guy has been making headlines this week," Rosendale began by saying, before revealing how he and Battle had received confirmation on air from the state government that the pet had been put down. Authorities seized Peanut from a home in Pine City, New York, a little town south of Elmira. Apparently, there had been multiple complaints, Rosendale pressed on. That had been from that little Karen that stayed in the same building, I believe. And basically, yeah, she's tried to delete herself from the internet, but people have already found her. Peanut's owner says the squirrel's mother was hit by a car and he had been taking care of the animal ever since. The owner runs an animal sanctuary and says he knows it's illegal to own a wild animal without a license. Government bureaucratic regulatory garbage, and says he was working to get Peanut certified as an educational animal. A raccoon take during the same raid was also put. I think I was meant to say taken during the same raid was also put down. He continued. Both he and Battle visibly somber. The Environmental Department of Conservation by killing animals said all of this was done to test for rabies. At that point, the anchor, who has manned his network's news desk for more than a decade, couldn't help but deviate from the script. "All right, that's what Albany is focusing on," he said. Peanut. Oh. The segment ended there, but the outrage surrounding the internet-famous squirrel, centred around the New York state government, continues to swirl. "What kind of person do these agencies employ?" one observer wrote Saturday of the at least 6 officers from the State Department of Environmental Conservation responsible for the squirrel's death. "Who has it in them to murder a bloody pet squirrel?" This earned a response from none other than Elon Musk, who had a blunt assessment of the recent sequence of events. "The government is a mindless and heartless killing machine, he said, as an array of memes ensued. Even Musk took part, sharing an AI-generated image of a squirrel toting a Star Wars lightsaber and an accompanying peanut-related play on words. President Trump will save the squirrels, Musk wrote in another tweet that dubbed as both a tribute and a ringing endorsement, R.I.P. Peanut. In another creation lampooning the Keanu Reeves-led John Wick, an AI-generated image circulated on X shows Reeves brandishing a gun, referencing how in the movie, Reeves' character embarks on a killing spree after someone kills his dog. That one. That's not an AI-generated image, that's just a screenshot from the movie. But anyway, the wee fat squirrel. It'd be pretty cool to own a pet squirrel, actually. A red one. A red one. Who just killed somebody's pet, man? It's disgusting. An accompanying caption thus read, the internet after hearing what they did to Peanut the squirrel. Others call for someone to exact vengeance on behalf of the squirrel, who had more than 500,000 followers and had touched the hearts of many more on social media. At the centre of the outrage, the State Department of Environmental Conservation said it took the animals this past Wednesday after receiving complaints, with the state requiring people to get a licence if they wish to own a wild animal. I have a little bit of leeway to give if someone wants to own like a lion or a tiger or something mental like that, but it's a squirrel. It's a squirrel. A squirrel's not going to kill you. And not even in some like weird way where you think, oh, beavers aren't that dangerous, and then people tell you the story about that guy that got bit in the leg by its giant teeth, which severed an artery, and the guy actually died, right? But a squirrel's not going to do that much damage unless it specifically knows where the jugular is, which I don't think they do, because it's a squirrel. But anyway, as Rosendale mentioned, Longo has said he was working to get Peanut certified, but the animal's life was snuffed out before he got the chance. Tests for rabies in animals are always fatal. Longo posted Sunday to further remember his old breakfast partner who had a penchant for waffles. Breakfast will never be the same without you, he wrote after issuing a statement earlier in the week describing how he was heartbroken. I love you, Mouse, he added as the heartbreak continues. The government just does disgusting things all the fucking time, just in the name of bureaucracy and control. Why did they have to kill them? There isn't even a good... Oh, we had to test it for rabies. Well, if it was a squirrel that was inside the house... Right, an animal, by the way, you can look at an animal and tell it has rabies. You know, see if it's foaming at the mouth and it's like, and it's hyper-aggressive. And also, the easiest way to test, put water in front of it. If it can't drink the water, in fact, it gags when you put the water near it, it has rabies. Because that's what the rabies parasite does. It's actually quite frightening to see it in humans. It's very, very weird. But yeah, it's like, it's a complete joke. But this the thing is, I mean, we saw Waco, we saw Ruby Ridge. I'm not comparing Peanut the squirrel to Waco or Ruby Ridge. Right? I'm not saying that is in like the same wheelhouse, right? That's not what I'm saying, right? But it's the fact is, if the government will just go in and happily like execute women and children, and everyone's like, can you believe they did that with a squirrel? Yeah. Yeah, that's nothing to them. They don't care. They will send 6 agents to the house, imprison the owners, take a squirrel out and fucking shoot it. They will do that. They don't care. You need to remember, you're not dealing with people. You're not dealing with people that have a moral compass, right? You're not dealing with people with feelings and empathy and stuff like that. That's, if you want to be a government employee, those are things you can't have, right? You're not suitable for the job if you have pesky things like emotions and consideration for human life, right? You can't work in the government if you think that way, right? So see the fact they went in and murdered a squirrel? Yeah, I totally believe they did that. I'm not the tiniest bit surprised by it, right? Because people wanted to own a little cute rescue squirrel. Oh, have you got a license for that, America? You know, the supposed freest nation in the world. You motherfuckers need a license for fishing, which is hilarious, to be perfectly honest. But yeah, it's an absolute joke. But I'm not the tiniest bit surprised that the government would do something like this.